Hello and welcome everyone to a Monday edition of A Good 10 Minutes. I'm your host, Alex. I hope everyone had a really fun and memorable St. Patrick's Day on Sunday. Hope everyone is doing well. And for those migraine headaches post drinking, Tylenol and Excedrin are great options. Let's get started. I have a packed morning for you all today. First and foremost, March Madness is here, but the real madness is believing you have a chance at filling out a perfect bracket. The odds of that are, believe it or not, 1 in 9.2 quintillion if you were just to pick each game via coin flip. But if you do know something about basketball and you've been following college basketball, the odds improve to a mere 1 in 120 billion. So, best of luck, everyone. Obviously, the stock market is closed over the weekend. But just to catch you up on last week, the three major indexes closed lower after several hotter than expected inflation reports lowered hype levels for Fed rate cuts. Airlines took a really big beating last week. For example, Southwest was down 18% just last week. Boeing safety problems are forcing them to cut back on routes, but they're also facing other challenges like reduced leisure demand and higher fuel costs. So, something to look out for this week. Up first, the chocolate crisis is here. This is not getting any news at all, but the global chocolate industry is facing its worst crisis since Johnny Depp played Willy Wonka. Demand for chocolate is vastly outweighing the available cocoa supply, leading to skyrocketing cocoa prices that will inevitably make chocolate treats more expensive in supermarkets around the world. The price chart for cocoa is something your algebra teacher would use to describe the term exponential. On Friday, benchmark cocoa futures surged to a record $8,018 per metric ton, which is a 25% increase last week alone, and a 215% higher than last year. The price spike has caused large African cocoa processors, which take raw cocoa and turn it into something usable for chocolate companies, to slash production, since they can no longer afford to buy beans. So why are cocoa prices so high? The first thing you need to know about cocoa trees is that they only flourish in a narrow band around the equator, which is why four West African countries, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Cameroon, and Nigeria, produce almost 75% of the global supply. Due to bad weather, bean disease, and a lack of investment in new trees stretching back decades, recent cocoa harvests have been dreadful, resulting in a yawning gap between supply and demand. The cocoa market will be short 374,000 tons this season, which is up from a shortfall of only 74,000. So almost a five-time increase in the gap in supply. Of course, supply is only one side of the price equation. As chocolate has transitioned from a luxury item to one you can easily pick up before catching a movie, global demand has doubled in the last 3 decades. Does this mean that chocolate could get more expensive? Well, actually, it already has. Prices for chocolate products at US retail stores grew 11.6% in 2023 alone. And going forward, confection company Hershey and Cadbury maker Mondelez warned they'll have no choice but to pass on higher cocoa costs to consumers. So, gonna be tough. All right, let's take a look at some headlines from this weekend. Um, Vladimir Putin extends reign as Russia's president. The man who has allowed to score 8 goals in a hockey game found even less resistance in his country's election, which the White House called obviously not free nor fair. 3 days of voting with no oversight at the polls or any meaningful opposition ended with Putin winning 6 more years as Russia's leader, a position that he has held as prime minister or president since 1999. There was pushback from citizens on Sunday. Thousands of supporters of late opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who died in Arctic prison last month, made their voices heard at a noon protests at polling centers. Still, with his landslide victory, Putin could soon overtake Stalin as Russia's longest-serving leader in more than 200 years. Netanyahu calls Schumer comments wholly inappropriate. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu shot back at scathing criticism from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer last week, saying Israel is not a banana republic and countries should not meddle in the electoral affairs of other democracies. Meanwhile, the first shipment of aid to Gaza by sea in almost 20 years, about 200 tons of food, arrived on Saturday, organized by Chef Jose Andres Central Kitchen Charity. Last headline from the weekend: fraud trial of Britain's Bill Gates begins today. In what prosecutors have called the largest fraud in history of Silicon Valley, UK tech mogul Mike Lynch faces 16 counts of criminal conspiracy and fraud stemming from the 11 billion sale of his software company Autonomy to HP in 2011. HP accused Autonomy's of serious accounting improprieties in November 2012 when HP announced an 8.8 billion write-down of its value. A 2022 civil case in London found Lynch liable for defrauding HP. He was extradited in May of 2023 to stand trial in the US. So going to be very, very interesting. Moving on to Elon Musk, again in the news, this time being enlisted to protect the US. The company that has been in the news lately for its moon-bound mega rocket, and you know what that is, of course, it's SpaceX, was awarded a $1.8 billion contract in 2021 to build a spy network of hundreds of Starshield satellites for the National Reconnaissance Office. The low Earth orbit satellites would support ground forces and enhance the ability of the US to locate targets globally. The SpaceX partnership reflects the US urgent effort to win the latest iteration of the space race. China announced plans earlier this month to create its own constellation of low orbit satellites to compete with Starlink. US intelligence official warned in February that Russia is developing a nuclear space weapon capable of destroying such satellites. So another space race in action. Musk's satellites have been a geopolitical football. Ukraine has claimed that Russia is using thousands of Starlink satellite terminals to gain a tactical advantage during its invasion, starting a squabble with the Biden administration. Starlink, however, is a separate entity from Starshield, which is designed for military or government uses. So, going deeper down into the rabbit hole, the New York dug into U.S. government's reliance on Musk for national security. So this is just going to be some more drama ahead, and watch out for that. In the week ahead, March Madness has arrived, as I had mentioned earlier. So obviously, for all you leaders and managers and organizations, worker productivity will go down. Just be aware of that. So that's starting this week. Will Wall Street bet on Reddit? On Thursday, Reddit will become the first social media platform since Pinterest in 2019 to go public. Reddit will list shares at a valuation of up to $6.4 billion, with a unique caveat: a chunk of exclusive IPO stock will be set aside for the platform's most loyal users. Unfortunately for Reddit, many of those loyal users are bearish about the IPO and have expressed interest in shorting the stock when it goes public. Last piece for this upcoming week. Central bank meetings will take effect, which will certainly impact our stock market. So just be on the lookout for that. There's virtually no chance that Jerome Powell will lower rates this week, but he is expected to discuss whether 2 or 3 rate cuts are in store for the rest of the year. Meanwhile, the Bank of Japan could hike rates for the first time since 2007, which would bring an end to the world's last remaining negative interest rate. All right. Just a couple more things for this week. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang will deliver the keynote address at the AI Giants Buzzy GPU Tech Conference today, which is March 18th. It's the first day of spring on Tuesday. World Down Syndrome Day takes place on Wednesday, and it's Global Recycling Day today on March 18th. All right, quick 5 headline hitters as well. A volcano in southern Iceland erupted for the 4th time in 3 months, prompting an emergency declaration. RFK Jr. is reportedly close to naming a running mate for his independent presidential bid. Nicole Shanahan, an attorney, entrepreneur, and former wife of Google founder Sergey Brin, is speculated as being the nominee. New Hampshire voters are suing the perpetrators of the Joe Biden deepfake robocalls leading up to January's presidential primary in the state. Meta is being investigated by the FDA and prosecutors in Virginia for possible involvement with the sale of illicit drugs on the company's social media platform. And Shigechi Nigeshi, the inventor of karaoke machine, died over the weekend at the age of 100. That's all I have for the day. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, comment, subscribe, let me know how I'm doing, and provide me feedback. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone has a fantastic week. See you all tomorrow, and take care. Bye-bye.